Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Single Mama's Guide podcast. I'm Kenya Moses, your wealth and well-being strategist, and today I'm so excited to be sitting down with an amazing woman by the name of Katherine Pomerantz. Katherine is an actress turned accountant who has capitalized on her artistic background to create a signature tax service for creative entrepreneurs. Her financial expertise has been featured by Buzzfeed, Discover Card, and by self-made millionaire Pyle. Katherine's unique perspective on money allowed her to open her own accounting firm in less than 1 year with no previous financial experience. Now, her virtual firm has global reach as she's helped everyone from expats to international startups create profitable business empires of their own. Let's welcome Katherine Pomerantz. Hi, Katherine. How are you?
Hi, I'm excited to be here. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to talk to you about finance and accounting. That is like my bread and butter. I absolutely love it. So
that's not the reaction I usually get. So fun.
Definitely, my past life was in finance and corporate finance. I was a financial advisor. So for me, I'm like, this is gay numbers and all that good stuff. So
I love it.
Our listeners are like, I don't know about this, but admittedly, finance, accounting can be scary. Definitely can be scary, but I think that you're going to be able to show us that it's not as, life. What's the word?
Intimidating. It's
yes.
not as intimidating as we think it is.
Exactly. So as we heard in your bio in the intro what I want to know is, how did you go from being an actress to deciding to be an accountant? That is like,
not normally the same type of personality or skill set there.
Mm-hmm.
So I started life. Well, I'm still very much a free spirit. So I can't say I started life as a free spirit. I am a free spirit, but I definitely started life as an artist with a capital A. I was all about, doing the theater thing. I still to this day love pretentious art people. I mean, give me some fancy coffee and some museums. Like, oh, it's my jam. And so in hanging out in that community, there's this starving artist stereotype.
Yes.
And you kind of being like struggling with money sort of like becomes a badge of honor in all honesty. It sort of is like something, and it's like, oh, like we're so much better than that. And, we're not like those people. Those people is sort of this huge mantra. But at the same time, real life happens, and I got married, and all of a sudden was like, okay, I should start thinking about things more seriously. And of course, there's that big scary thing where like, well, that includes finances, which I'd always avoided doing. And then I noticed none of my friends could help me. And I was like, this seems silly. Why is this so hard for all of us? And why do we all hate this so much? And so I started studying money specifically. Okay. And there's so many reasons for this. One, it was being married and just trying to like plan for a future. But two, it was also like, I've always was really, really smart. And I realized that there's this huge gap in my education where I literally just didn't know how money worked. And I was working crazy hard, and I was an artist and I was a freelancer, but I also had a day job still. I mean, I've always had a lot of entrepreneurs. We love to work hard. So
yes,
yeah,
nonstop.
All the time. I still have that problem. It's a good problem. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I was constantly working hard. And after I got married, I realized I was still making less than my husband. And this is not unusual, but particularly bad because my husband, at the time we got married, was a graduate student who wasn't employed.
So he wasn't
so
breaking in the big bucks.
No, he just happened to get enough scholarships that he was like making enough money at the end of the day that, he was paying for things. And I, with my freelancing and all of my odd jobs, almost equaled that. Mm-hmm. And it sort of hit me, that can't be right. I work really hard. I'm really smart. I'm really capable. I must be missing something.
Yes.
So I started studying money specifically because I'm like, there's something I'm lacking. And I realized the more I studied money, the more like I studied where money comes from, how money works. That's how I fell in love with business and small business in particular, and entrepreneurs, because we literally make wealth. We create wealth. Yeah. We could jump down that rabbit hole in a little bit. I love it. But that in studying that, I realized, whoa, it's not just like the artists and the, you know, the rebellious people who struggle with money. I ran into people who were literally in the business of making money, who were making millions of dollars, who were still struggling with money. And it's so I'm the type of person where I was like, I'm fixing this. This is just wrong. No, I am not allowing this anymore. And I started my own accounting firm, and you know, here we are. I'm still studying money because I'm still trying to fix it all.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is absolutely amazing, because I am like yourself. I'm a retired professional dancer. I mean, you're not a professional dancer, but an artist, actress, retired professional dancer and classical vocalist. And I still sing and do all that stuff. But a majority of my community are artists, and they are full on artists, and that there's that hustle mentality, right? Constantly just like gig here, gig there, trying to meal piece everything together. And then being really afraid, wanting money, but being really afraid of having it, because then you lose that status, right? Of like, no, I'm a struggling, you know, we've ate up that whole societal idea of like starving artists. And I'm like, there's absolutely no reason why you cannot be an artist and make lots of money. And I'm like, I see that with my friends all the time. And I'm like, let me help you, you know?
Yeah. Well, that was something I realized. That was how I started studying business. Was like, wait, I'm a business owner, even though I was just a brand of myself, but every artist is a business owner. If you're trying to create something and you're trying to sell your ideas for money or sell your talents for money, you are a business owner. I wasn't an employee of anyone. I was working for myself, and nobody taught me that. Yeah. And you get those sellouts, you know, you get like all these nasty terms just because you want money for what you do. And it's like, just because I love something doesn't mean I shouldn't be paid for it. Like, what?
Exactly. So, you know, that comes to just, you know, I'm sure this is a big part of your work as well, as working with clients and helping them to understand their value, their worth, and that, yes, this money is not this evil thing, right? That, you know, by having this, by making lots of money does not suddenly make you this, you know, Dr. Evil. You are the same person you were before. You're now being valued and paid for what you do best. You know? Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about financial literacy. Like, actually, you know, I think about this growing up. I had no clue whatsoever. And so now everybody's going to know my business. But when I was in college, I racked up thousands of dollars of credit card debt, because I was like, so they were just giving them out. You know, it was like the first day on campus and they're like, here's a visa, you know, it was crazy. And I wasn't taught in school and high school or before that, financial literacy, and really, you know, you got the basic economics, but it was like on this global thing. It wasn't like, okay, Kenya, this is this is how you budget. This, when you don't have money, you don't spend it, you know, that sort of thing. Right. And I think it continues on into our adult life, right? And so as we become small business owners and we're like, oh, okay, I'm going to go into business for myself. And then you find yourself not making the amount of money that you want, or not being able to manage it properly. You know, I know for myself, 10 years ago when I started my company, it really was, I had to stop and look at everything at, why am I where I am? It's like I work really hard. I would make lots of money, but it would suddenly disappear. I'm like, what did I spend this on? And, you know, I wanted a certain level of growth, and it seemed like, you know, you're making a substantial amount of money, but at the end of the day or at the end of the month, I'm like, I don't have anything, you know? So I wonder, what is a good way for those who may have a similar story as mine, like just not having that education from an early age? And I know you said that you started studying money kind of later during your acting career. So maybe you can, if you have a personal story, that would be great. Just like, what is like the first step to just making sense of it all, and like coming to terms with, okay, you know, this is the foundation of creating a healthy relationship with money and how that can relate to starting or growing a business?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is such a great question because I think everybody deep down can be like, whoa, Kenya, that was totally me, or that's totally me right now. Like I frequently work with business owners who are like, I am making more money than I've ever had in my entire life. And I'm also more in debt than I've ever been. And I still have nothing left.
Yes.
What's wrong? Like I thought once I had a business, I was working for myself. Once I had income, I thought that would fix it all. And it doesn't. And so, yeah, let's go back. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Financial literacy and financial education is a huge passion of mine. And I get very, very almost angry about it. Well, because we're taught all this stuff in school and we're taught math and we're taught, sciences, and we're taught a lot of good skills, but nothing kind of prepares us for money. It's not taught at all in school, and it's not taught at all in college, and it's not even taught in business schools sometimes. Unfortunately, it just really isn't. We first learn about money from the home.
Right.
And sometimes it's a really hard pill to swallow that if your parents are poor, or if your family is poor, or if you come from a background of people who also struggled with money, that the things they've taught you about money are probably wrong. Because if they knew better, it would be easier, because very little of your wealth, very little of how rich you are has to actually do with the amount of dollars you have. It has everything to do with how you use them, which is, again, another weird, hard pill to swallow, because more zeros equals more wealth. But I like to use the example of buying a home, right? A lot of people want to save up and buy a home, and we're taught that this is a fantastic investment and that this is going to grow our net worth, which is true. I am not immediately going to jump on and be like, well, you're wrong. But there is some caveats to that, because how many people, if you think back 10 years ago, lost their house and that house became a liability?
Yes.
Our whole lives were taught that, oh, this house is part of my wealth. It's part of my net worth. It's part of my assets. But because you're spending money on the house and it's taking cash away from you, then that house isn't growing your actual wealth in the same way that is actually going to help you. And that's the very first thing people don't think about, is like, we're going to add up all these zeros and dollars, but we're not taught what money actually is and how money actually works and how money flows. Cash flow is a nice business buzzword that affects personal life and business life. And so the example of a house is a really good one, where yes, you are actually growing your assets, your equity is the word, by buying a home. But while you're still putting cash into that house and it's not giving you cash back, that's a liability, sweetheart. That's an expense.
Yes,
housing is an expense, and that's cash flow. So that's just one basic example to kind of show how traditional thinking isn't always the best thinking. And this is something that too is like, when you start hanging out with people who are actually wealthy, you start to realize, well, there's lots of things about money I don't get. And it seems really gauche, because they talk, like, rich people talk about money all the time, which seems really like gross. Like, like that's so evil. Like, oh my gosh, can we just stop talking about things? But they are not doing it to show off or to brag. They're legitimately interested in it. It's like a hobby. It's like, and people who are good with money know that they always have to continue their financial education. They're always having to reach new things, learn about new markets, learn about new businesses, learn about new investments. And people listening are probably all like, okay, I don't have time for that. That sounds great. And I've probably already lost some listeners. But I like to show that people this, simply because I'm now going to break it out and be like, okay, you know that this is true. You know that rich people talk about money all the time and we think it's gross. But at the same time, we know that average people, normal people, even myself, money expert, no, I'm still learning and I'm still struggling. Like you have to start from such a horrible place of just such ignorance, and we don't even know it because we're taught things, but we're taught things by people who don't know. And so first and foremost, that's, I think, the really hard pill that people have to swallow, is you are going to have one day have a wake up call like I did, where it was like, holy moly, I'm working really hard. I'm working 60 to 80 hours a week, every week. And I like what I'm doing, but I'm broke. And what that moment was for me, I already alluded to that, was the first year I was preparing my joint tax return for me and my husband, realizing, holy moly, he still makes more money than me with his scholarships and with his grants and his research stuff. It's like, he's also broke. We're broke together. I mean, we were pennies. And even though I enjoyed everything I was doing and I loved what I was doing, when you're thinking forward thinking and you're thinking about the future, it was like, wait, I don't have more hours in my day. I can't be an employee my whole life, and this isn't going to work. There's got to be something I'm missing. And so that was my moment for me. And ironically, I was already really good at budgeting. I was already really good at paying off my own credit cards and stuff. I had gotten past that point of financial literacy because I was raised by middle-class family who at least taught me that, like, the very basics of, you do have to manage expenses and you do have to watch where your money is going. And that is the thing that, that's a starting place, and that's a really good starting place, but to bounce off from there is really, really difficult. So here's some things that I always describe to people when it's like, okay, if you're at that breaking point, if you are, young Katherine or young Kenya being all like, wait, I have nothing left and I'm working really hard. Mm-hmm. There's something I'm missing. Let's figure out what that is, because the alternative is to get angry. And I think I think we could both relate to this. A lot of our friends are angry at the system, right?
Yeah.
At the system that's keeping us poor.
Definitely.
But I think that a lot of people that are business owners, we're the type of people who are problem solvers, and we're really self-motivated and we're really disciplined. So that's the real strength, is when you're at that breaking point, instead of just getting angry and being all like, well, there's no way to fix it. It's, okay, what am I missing to fix it? I really, really enjoy the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and I highly recommend it. And he has a rule. Yes. He has a rule I love where he says it's not, I can't afford it. It's how can I afford it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so that's the type of thinking that I want us to be in today, right now, as I launch into my whole, this is what money is talk. How can we do this? There's something we're missing. We're at this breaking point. Stuff sucks. What are we missing? How can we afford it?
Right.
And so the very first place I always like to take people when it's like, okay, you want to be rich? So what's money? What is money? I could hold up a little dollar bill and wave it at you. Is this money?
That's not money.
Is this money?
It's technically money,
but it's not. No, okay, here we go. It's a trick question. It's a trick question, Kenya. You fell for it. I'm so sorry. For everyone listening, she's got this look on her face like, oh, this is a trick. It was. I'm so sorry. A little bit of fun there. But no, I could hold up a dollar bill and wave it around. It's not money. This is literally a banknote. Mm-hmm. What is a banknote? It is a representation of an amount of dollars. By me giving you $1, I am giving you how much money is this represent and how is it being changed hands. It's exactly what a check is. A check is the same thing. We write out the amount of money, we write out where it's going to, and then we write out where it comes from. So cash acts the same way. How much money are we exchanging? Where's it going and who's it from? That's all cash is. It represents something. So all those dollars and all those ones and zeros in your bank and all those digital currency stuff, it all represents something. But what does it represent? So what is money? So we need to zoom out even further, right? It's like, okay, money's not this tangible object. It's not something we can hold. So what is it? And a lot of people will be like, well, it represents something. So what does it represent? And it actually represents nothing. I don't know if people remember economics classes or history classes, but the world used to be on something called the gold standard, where money did used to represent gold. I could go to the bank and I could get gold in exchange for my dollars. Then the Great Depression happened. Everybody freaked out, stopped putting money in their banks. And when you stop putting money in the bank, that's really, really hard on the economy, because you need a flow of money for money to work. We already alluded to cash flow. So what money is not necessarily the gold that it represents. It is not these banknotes. It's a flow of something. It is a give and a take. It's an energy. Literally. And that's in money's name, because we also call money currency, right? We always talk about the different currencies of country. Well, currency is current, like a current of electricity or a current of water. That's a type of energy too. So it's always going somewhere. It's always working towards something. And it's something that can be destructive, right? It's a flood. If it's untamed energy, untapped, lightning, that's dangerous. But if you can channel it and build it and put it into something, then it's fantastic. And if it's moving and it's flowing, that's natural. That's a good process. Kinetic energy builds things. It's transformative. Mm-hmm. If it gets blocked up, then that hurts. So that's kind of why lightning hurts, right? It's if the electricity could travel through you, it probably wouldn't hurt that bad. It's because it gets into you and gets stuck and then it hurts. Or like a dam where you dam something up and then there's a flood, versus building a canal where the water and the energy goes to where you need and it can build something. Yeah. And most people are like, that seems so woo-woo. And I'm like, well, okay, now we're talking things are weird, but I mean this literally, because we're no longer on the gold standard. We're on now something called a fiat system. So money literally has value because we all kind of sort of just like agreed it did.
We're like,
right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We all were like, yeah, sure, this is valuable now. Because what happened during the Great Depression, when people stopped trusting the banks because they were failing and people weren't investing in things and they didn't have jobs, they were hoarding all of their actual dollars. But if there's no energy flow, if that flow stops, then there's no growth. There's no transformation. You can't fix the economy if there's no growth. So the government came in and said, okay, I now will back up all of the money in the banks. We will now insure it ourselves. So they actually took all the gold and hoarded it away and put it in Fort Knox. And they said, okay, you can't go to the bank anymore to get gold, but it won't fail. We've got the gold. We're backing up your dollar. And in practice, that meant we actually weren't on the gold standard anymore because people stopped relying on the gold. They started trusting the word of the government that this is what they're going to do. It became so powerful that we actually are now off the gold standard officially as of the 1970s. Like we just voted it away and every country in the world has like followed suit. Now, economists will argue whether or not that's a good thing, whether or not like there's all sorts of weird repercussions. But for our purposes, we don't want to be economists. We just want to live comfortably and to have wealth. So we just need to understand that money is nothingness and it's meaningless. And it's just a give and a take and a flow of energy. So what do I do with that knowledge? What does that mean for me?
Yes, in the everyday.
Yes, because that's really all abstract. And that's great. And maybe some people found it interesting. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, cool, Katherine. Nice lesson of history. How does that apply to me?
I think it's fascinating. It's fascinating for me. I'm like, yeah, keep going. But I'm like, no.
Because no one ever talks about this. When people, when all of our artist friends are like, oh, money's so worthless. Yeah, you're literally right. It is. It's totally worthless. So, and yet we also let it rule our lives.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about the final part of that then. In that money's got this energy and it's this flow and it needs to go somewhere. It needs to be put to work. It needs to do something. It's also just an idea. And we've already established that. So what happens when you're exchanging money? Again, I will interject just a little bit of basic economics. Money is exchanged for a good or a service. That's the definition of business. It's the exchange of goods and services. And money kind of is a stand-in for something because it just moves faster, where I don't have to barter with you, Kenya, where, okay, if you want tax services done, well, first I'm going to need something from you. And I don't know, what do you have a value that you could offer me? No, you just can pay me money. We both agree money is valuable. So that's just simple. Like, okay, great. So if I do a good job and you give me money, you're just thanking me. You're being all like, hey, you helped me out. You get money when you solve problems. The more problems you solve, the more money you get. And that, for a business owner, is the greatest idea in the entire world. And I bet people have all heard this advice in some form because we hear this in marketing all the time. Well, who's your ideal audience? How do you help them? And if you focus on that and the value, then people are going to want to pay you because that's all money is. It's an appreciation for doing a good job. So the more you focus on how you're helping the person, the more they're going to want to pay you. In fact, they're not only going to want to pay you a lot, they're going to want to pay you quickly because if you can really solve a problem, I honestly don't care how much money it takes. I will pay it if it truly is the best solution. And we see this all the time where people will buy fancier shirts because it helps them get that job promotion because the brand is nice. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, yeah, it's the same shirt as you could get at Target maybe.
Exactly.
But it does a better job. It does a better job for what you need that shirt for. So you pay more for it. That's it's a very simple example, but that's all branding is, right? You've positioned yourself to help the person better.
Yes.
And so if you kind of get all that in your head and you understand that money is just an energy and it's flowing and it's got to go somewhere, that's kind of fun. And that's where accounting becomes like the best job I've ever had because now my job is just to track the money and learn how money works by itself because money is not limited. It's literally meaningless, right? Money is nothing. It's an idea. And the government can print more money whenever it wants. That's inflation. That's literally what inflation is when the government's printing more money because it needs to create more.
Yeah.
Well, when a business can do the same thing, it doesn't have to be that the government's just creating wealth. You can make money. And I mean that literally. As a business owner, you're making money. You're starting a job for yourself that didn't exist before, and you're getting income, and you're creating money, and you're getting more money that ever existed in form of profits. Another fancy jargony word, that's just when you create excess money that never existed before, you've created profits. And that is how investing works, actually. A lot of people get really intimidated if they want to go open an investment or something. All you're doing is you're buying into a business, and they're giving money back to you in the form of profit. So when that business is profitable, you get a chunk of it because you gave them some money to get going and to get working, and that money went to work, and everybody made more money, and you get some money back. And that's all that is. So money is limitless. We're constantly making more of it all the time. And I mean, you can probably hear it in my voice because I love this. I get really excited by that idea. Like, whoa, okay, cool. How does that work? And I think that when you get this idea, I hope you can catch on to the excitement, because if you kind of get that idea in your head, it's like, okay, this is now like almost like a game. And it's now almost like, okay, let's learn about this and how this works. Because if we can get that in our head, then we're never going to be poor again. Because if all we have to do is solve problems to get money, then let's just find the best things that we're good at solving. I mean, so that's how I always start the conversation, where it's like, if you want to get rich, let's talk about what money is. And money is just that. It's an energy. It's a way of showing appreciation, and it's a resource. You put all those things together and you get something of infinite value and of limitless potential. So what can you do with that?
That is amazing. I love your enthusiasm, and I'm like, it's magic. Money is magic. And so now I'm just going to walk around saying money's magic, and I'm just going to create money all the time. And, I think the same way in my business about, energetic flow with all that good stuff, but it's hard when you're in the moment, right? Like if you're a business owner, or even if you're not a business owner, you're just kind of going through your life and going through your day, and you're having a difficult time. So say you need, X amount of clients, you're trying to increase, your income and all of that. And it's like, when you're in it, sometimes it's hard to be objective and be like, okay, you know what? It's actually not about you not being great at what you do or what your work is. Sometimes you have this stagnant energy where you're not able to see past all of the gray areas. And so energetically, you're not able to really feel and understand that you're actually just creating these opportunities to create the money and all the good stuff. So what would you say to someone like me? Because I have those moments where I'm like, I have months where I'm doing really, really good, and people are like, oh my gosh, how do you make that much money? And then some months I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, yeah. I suck, Yeah. Nobody likes me. And so I find myself sometimes having to, to coach myself. It's funny when you end up coaching yourself, and it doesn't always work. So what would you suggest is like a good tip to like get me back into the game, to help me get back into myself and start understanding like what my contribution to creating wealth is?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. My answer is actually going to be boring. But
oh man, well don't answer.
I know. Well, I say it's boring only because everyone's always really resistant. And now keep in mind, I am an accountant. So my answer for you is bookkeeping. I know. See, I told you. All right, here we go.
I like that answer.
So we've already established money's an energy. And I mean that. I mean, like, we're talking literal, like, kinetic energy here. We're not even talking like, any woo-woo manifestation stuff. It works because money's literally just an energy. So we can attract that to ourselves. But we also still have to understand what money is doing and understand its own jargon and its terms and how it's applied. So we can feel really good about the limitless potential of money. That, it's easy to get excited to that part. Rewind and re-listen to that part of the interview we just had. Please do. I hope you do all the time. Anytime you're feeling sad, just like think of the limitless potential of money and cheer yourself up. But when you're actually faced with real numbers and you've got bills to pay and sales are slow, that's a horrible feeling. So what we need to do is understand how money talks to us, because the answer is actually in the money itself. When money is bad, the answer is in the money. The money is going to talk to you and tell you why it's hurting, why it can't make more of itself, why it's not being applied in the best way. There's some block and we need to build a canal. We've built up a dam. The water can't flow. Energy's stuck. We need to figure out how, again, to turn it into a canal so it goes to where it needs to go. The crops grow. We get more of it. And this is why I actually have an acronym when I'm talking about the 3 aspects of money. I say, let money work for you, LET. Money is a language, and it's an energy, and it's a teammate. We already actually talked about energy, so I'm going out of order. But money is a language. And we've already alerted to some of this too, because I've talked about things like inflation, profits, cash flow. These are all money terms. And we've already talked about how rich people like to talk about money. And when you're listening to them and you're not really sure what they're talking about, you're like, okay, I assume that was English, but I have no idea what you just referenced. Like, yeah, good investment in your future, Uncle Richard. Yeah, that sounds, yes. We've all been there. And so it's literally like listening to a foreign language, because money is a language. It's got jargon. It is something that we have to figure out. But that in and of itself is a freeing idea because nobody is born knowing how to speak a language. Even our very first language, we had to learn it from our parents. We had to learn it from the environment, from observation. And every language after that becomes harder and harder to learn. Fortunately, there are translators. So there's always people you can go at. There's books you can get. There's, internet articles and blog articles that can help us translate the money. And so when you're in those positions where things are looking bad and you're just faced with real numbers, the more we understand money's language, the more that you can kind of take possession of that and turn it into something good. And so I want to give you an example, and let's use some just number. I'm going to make them off the top of my head, but I'll give you an example. This is why it all comes down to bookkeeping. This is why, even though I do tax strategy, even I do business coaching, my business is the bookkeeping artist, because you got to start there. And I always tell people, let's get real numbers and let's make them as accurate as possible. So that way, when we're looking at the money and we're looking at the cash flow, we can figure out what's going on. So if, for example, profits are really low, where maybe your sales have been really steady, and we won't even say it's been a slow month. Let's actually just say sales are steady and kind of at a good, consistent base. But at the end of the month, we still don't have money left over. Where does it go? And that's when you have to know exactly what you're spending it on. That's why you need to total out all your expenses. And a lot of times, a lot of people are like, well, let's just reduce expenses. You can only do that so much, though. And especially as your business gets bigger, your expenses have to get bigger to support it. Money needs money to work, and you're going to need extra help. You're going to need extra supplies, extra inventory. As you grow, your expenses will grow with you. The trick is you have to grow those expenses in proportion to your income. The ratio needs to stay healthy. And that's why profit's really important. What's left over at the end of the day is actually what you're supposed to flip around and reinvest in your business. I don't want you to put personal money into your business. I want your business to be making enough that you can save up a little bit and put it back into your business. That's a very hard mindset to get into, especially because personally, we're not taught to do that. We're not taught, we expense everything. We put it into debt, and that is money still could be leveraged well to work for us. But if we don't understand that flow, we're just going to get into trouble. And so once you've got what you're actually spending, what your actual expenses are, you've got to start looking at those ratios, and you've got to start looking at things like return on investment. In the instance where there's not a lot of money left over, I will dig in and I will look at 2 places. First and foremost, I will look at advertising. Are you getting money out of that advertising? And I want it broken down as specifically as possible, which is why you have to have bookkeeping. Because if you don't have accurate numbers, you can't get accurate answers from your money. So all that advertising, how much sales is it generating? Are you spending more on advertising? And did your sales grow as much? If not more, actually, I want you to spend like nothing on advertising. Some businesses actually don't. They have no advertising whatsoever and they can still grow. So advertising doesn't have to be a real expense, which is why it's not under cost of goods, it's under overhead. You could cut out all your advertising and still produce your goods or service. And so that's first and foremost why that's the first place I look at, because it's often a place where we'll overspend or we'll invest a lot. Now, modern people, modern business owners, virtual business owners, we do the same thing with courses and apps and tools. And I am 100% about tech stacks. I love them. I am 100% virtual. I love the cloud. Everything about my business is very automated. All of my clients are paperless. It's living the dream, but we have to make sure that when we're investing in those things that we're getting a return on that investment. Again, your money needs to grow more money. So you need to make sure that it's actually saving time. It's responding to mission critical. And the way that we do all of these things, once you've got all your, sorry, see, I have so many ideas. It's like, okay, well, give me some real numbers, Kenya. All right, your sales are slow. We're in the real world. Here's all this thinking. Strategy with money comes with financial literacy and financial education. So once we've got real bookkeeping, we've got to learn what it's telling us. And so again, let's look at the return on investment of advertising. Let's look at our return on our different expenses. And maybe we can cut expenses, but what we really need to look at is things like, well, profit margin, how much is left over. And the place to do that is actually in your pricing. How much does it cost to produce your good? And you need to look at time, because I'm guessing a lot of people who listen to this are service providers. Yes. Time is everything. And I don't want you to say, well, it takes me like 3 or so hours. And like, if you're really struggling and it's really hard for you to make sales or grow, you need to start timing yourself. Just do it for a week, ideally 2 or 3, and get a really good feel for how long does this take me? How long does this take me? I'll use an example of a photographer I worked with. She had been in business for 10 years, brilliant photographer, gorgeous work. And she had never, ever, ever really been able to give herself a good salary, despite having a 10-year reputation. Her business base was solid. She constantly had new clients, but she was still struggling. And so I was like, okay, let's start with profit margin. And so we needed to figure out the time it took her to do things, because she was like, I really need to focus on weddings. I just need to book more weddings. And I'm like, I don't know if that's right. Let's wait and find that out, because weddings were her biggest package. They were her most expensive thing by far. She offered weddings, and then she would also do portraits for like high school graduations or family portraits around the holidays, basic photographer stuff.
Right.
Once we broke out the time it took her to do things, I said, okay, how much do you want to make per hour? What would be what you need to take home to pay yourself? And she's like, oh, well, like $30 or $40 or $100. I mean, you get a pick, right? Well, I'm going to use $100 because it's easy math. I want to make $100 an hour. And so that was kind of how she priced it. It's like, well, if I work 12 hours, I'll just make it like $1,200, right? And I'm like, okay, put a pin in that. Let's hold on that. Let's actually total in all the amount of time it took. So once we broke out weddings, it wasn't just the time of being at the actual wedding, taking photos. It was also hiring the assistant. It was also the editing. It was also the planning with the bride and the groom. So once we totaled that, her take-home pay, and I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but I think it was around $12 an hour.
Okay.
Because of the sheer amount of time of after she took out the expenses of getting there, gas, a whole day on the job, paying for a second photographer, which you really do need for weddings. Nowadays, and to have a really good package, she was making pennies on the dollar. We looked at the same thing when she broke up actual time for her portraits. She was making $60 an hour with portraits. So what that told me was 2 things. One, don't advertise for weddings whatsoever. The return on investment is not there. Spend all your advertising on your biggest selling package, which actually is the biggest netting package, your portraits. Big during the holidays and big during graduation season. That's when you spend all your advertising there. Only those 2 seasons to book those 2 things for those specific services, and you don't advertise anything else, and you don't even advertise year round. 2, only go after weddings that can pay you a certain amount, or I always leave this open. Go after a wedding that really does serve your heart. If it's like, okay, you know what? I really do like this couple. I am free for this. But don't think of that as the backbone of your business. Think of that. I feel nourished by this, so I'm going to do this even if I'm not compensated as much as I want to be, because we're humans, and that's always good. And also, hey, we both came from an artistic background. I'm such a sucker for heart projects. Like, yeah, go for it. Do it. Good mission. Good do it. Doing that, because we fixed the profit margin, meant she had $10,000 saved up by the end of the year, because she just fixed the one little thing. Now, that's a really simple, really basic example. But again, it's like once you understand how cash flow works, that's the kind of example you can dig into. But I could not have done that if we didn't have good bookkeeping with her, which is why I say good bookkeeping. Now, of course, obviously, I'm going to look at people's financial statements, and I always have a cash flow talk that I do where we're talking like, okay, let's break down inventory, let's break down like debt and liabilities, because a lot of businesses are carrying debt. We'll talk about all sorts of stuff on the balance sheet, and it's really fun for me, and we really get into it. And it's like, okay, I have been doing this longer, but hey, remember, I started life as an actress. And even though, I'm smart and capable, that's not necessarily mean like I'm not, the smartest of the smartest person. I knew nothing. When I say I knew nothing, guys. And I opened an accounting firm in a year. So I always like to reference that, because it's like, I have a lot of stuff now and I can just spout this off the top of my head now. But this is also like my passion, my heart, my love. And you can do this yourself. I'm 100% self-taught. I still don't have a degree in any of this. It's just stuff I've learned. And so you can do the same thing. The place I would start is not only having really good bookkeeping and breaking out what your expenses are and what your income is, looking at the cost of goods, what labor goes to the product, not labor total, not your administrative assistant, not people who help you file, not even bookkeepers. It's just labor for the product. What materials do you need for the product? Figure out the cost of goods. A really good frame of reference is that once you figure out the exact cost, you need to make sure that's only 30% of what you sell it for. So if you sell something for $100, the cost to make it better be 30. So that way you've got 70 net, so you can pay for overhead and pay yourself. That's just a good frame of reference. The second thing I would say is that once you kind of understand what you're actually spending for expenses, you need a budget. People always hate that word, but hear me out. You need
all the words that I don't like.
I know. Bookkeeping, budget. Yeah. No, hear me out. Budgets are the best, and I love them. And here's why. Because a budget is how your money is going to talk back to you, especially if you don't have the ability or all the fancy terms or all the jargony things to understand, what is accounts receivable and when are you expecting that back? And what is the amortization rate on that loan? And what are you expensing in interest? Right? I just lost you with these big fancy terms. You don't need that to start. You can build a budget. Anybody can budget. Budgets are, basic and they're boring. They're not, because cash flow is cool. And here's why. So once you get your budget and you do the expenses, here's how I suggest you budget. First and foremost, you need to understand what's the mission of your business. You as a CEO, who do you help? How do you help them? What is the one thing you're solving really, really well? Because remember, you're going to get paid when you solve problems. So who are we helping? How are we helping them? That's mission critical. Everything that your business does needs to be supporting mission critical. That's how I evaluate apps. That's how I evaluate, coaching. That's how I evaluate advertising. Is it supporting my mission? You also need to support the vision for the future. What's that mission going to look like in a few years? So have a vision statement for your business. Also understand your values. What are the values you're not going to compromise? Because again, you as a real human, people are going to want to do business with. If you've got good values, good ideas, you can really help them. They're going to like you. They're going to pay you lots. So if you can get that and hold that onto that, that's just going to help you. So then you build your budget around it. What do I need to spend to support that mission? Where do I need to sit? What do I need to save up for and invest in to create my future for my business? For example, my mission statement is that I want to help 3 million Americans retire rich by the year 2030. That's my mission. I'm doing that through helping small businesses, because small businesses create wealth, right? We already talked about how that cash flow works, and with investments and you creating jobs, like you're going to save the world. So I'm helping business owners do that. That's my mission. I love it. My vision is how that looks in the world is like, I'm going to help these profitable small businesses. I need to get better at that. So I'm investing a lot in my own education. I'm investing in the education of my clients, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a personal example of this is how my budget is supporting my mission. These are what I need to be spending on. Compare that to what you're really spending. What needs to stay? What can you cut? Or what can you scale down? Or what are you spending too much on because it's not mission critical? As the owner of a business, I don't care if you're a solopreneur. I don't care if you're a coach. I don't care if you are an actress and you're just, branding yourself. You're a business owner and you need to understand that mission, and you need to lead like you've got a mission to solve, because you do. So once you do all that and you can break it up and you start writing in your budget and you start filling in real numbers, I want you to not only know the totals for the year, I want you to know the months when they're going to come up. Because once that's happening, you can compare month to month real world spending to the budget. And building a budget that way is kind of fun, because it's kind of like, maybe it's just me, but I love games and I like winning, and I love having the idea of like, I'm on a mission and I'm going to like solve something cool and I'm going to do something cool. And like, this is my plan of attack. And that's what your budget is. With these numbers, that's your plan of attack. That's your plan. So real world is never going to match your budget. And I think that's why most people hate budgeting, especially when it comes to personal budgets. It's unattainable. I will never meet that. I will never meet that budget. It's a cage. It's a limit. It feels gross. But that's not how I'm telling you to budget. I'm telling you to make a plan and a vision for your future. And the numbers are simply helping you measure that success. They're simply measuring the point between A and B. you need to know how much you want in each category, because you need to know what's critical to your mission, what's going to support the vision for the future. Where if I need to afford to hire somebody and I need a team, I need to start investing in payroll. I need to start investing in these. You can't do that if you're not tracking real numbers, which is why it's bookkeeping, is why I say bookkeeping is critical. So you've got your mission, you've got your budget, and you need to know month to month, because you have to understand cash flow. And this is why I'm always talking about cash flow, because you can keep your business open if you have positive cash flow, even if you have zero profits or negative profits, as long as you can pay your bills when money comes in, and you can make sure that more money is coming in than going out. Right. Because you're managing when you pay stuff, you're managing when your clients pay you, you can keep your business open for years. And that would be very stressful. Don't get me wrong. If you're taking a loss, that's very stressful. But if you can just keep the lights on, there's a couple things I believe about everybody listening: that you're smart and that you're capable. And in my experience, given enough time, people who are smart and capable and disciplined and hardworking will always find the solution. You just have to give them room and give them time. So give yourself room and give yourself time. Learn enough about money management, compare it to the real world, and do this monthly, if not weekly. What's coming in, what's going out. If I know that by the week, and I know, okay, I can send this bill now, I can send this bill now. If you can time that, you can keep the door open. You can figure out the rest of it. You can get back on your mission critical. You can get back up to the profits. You can get back up to the sales. And because you've got that budget, because you've thought through these things, you will have answers fast. Because if you sit down to look at your budget and you look at real worlds compared to what's supposed to be on there, all of a sudden the answer is going to present itself. It's going to be glaring. It's going to be obvious. Where am I wasting my time? Geez, I broke out all this cost of goods. I'm paying, and this is a harsh example, but this is just something I thought of. I'm paying this, this assistant to help me with, all my filing and stuff. But I could not be paying her because that's just a time suck for both of us. That's not a good use of our time. And she's really capable. Let's get this automated. Let's find a CRM. Maybe it's time to invest in a CRM that captures better client leads, that can build a better mailing list, so we don't have to keep wasting our time just organizing, just trying to keep track of stuff. Maybe that's something for you as a solopreneur. Like, I know that's my struggle. That's probably why that example came up to me. I'm constantly struggling to keep stuff organized and just keep track of who I'm meeting when. It's like, wait, there's software for that. I can get a scheduling software, help that easier, have it feed through my emails. It's like, okay, I know what the problem is though, because I've sat there, I've thought about it. This is wasting my time. So when I go out to spend money and invest in it, I know what to spend it on, so that's going to be a good investment. It's going to actually solve the problem. It's not just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it's going to stick. It's like, no, I identified what was wrong in my mission and I know how to solve it, and I know what kind of thing I need to buy to fix it. So that's how you can evaluate new hires. That's how you can evaluate new tech. So it all kind of plays together. And all we did was talk about, hey, just make sure you track where it's going and make sure you can compare it to a plan. And no, it's never going to be the real world, because that's just the plan. That's just your map. You're just trying to get there, and it's got to change as you grow, right? As you get bigger, like I said, your expenses are going to grow with it. And so I hope in all of my rambling that makes sense, because on the simplest terms, remember, money is limitless and it's just energy, and you're going to get paid for for helping someone really, really well. And so once you've identified how you do that help, and you just put numbers behind it of this is what it looks like when I'm helping people, then when you're actually looking at your money and it's stressful, because you have that frame of reference, it becomes less stressful. Because even just filling it out, it sucks if you know you're doing poorly and you're just looking at the numbers and you're totaling it. That's awful. But if I'm totaling it and I have something to reference it to where, yeah, this sucks, but wait, I know it sucks. I know why it sucks. It sucks because it's supposed to look like this. This is what I'm focused on. I'm focused on my mission, my good stuff. This is what I'm supposed to look like. So you can say, like, well, how do I get from here to here? If you're just doing, and this is why bookkeeping and budgeting is hard for most people, because if you just do bookkeeping, if you're just getting the expenses, well, what do I do with that? Why do I have that? All of a sudden, I now know that I'm going out to eat all the time on the company card, and I'm spending $700 a month on lunches for just me. That when you're faced with that hurts. When you're faced with doing a bad job, that hurts, especially when it's yourself telling yourself you have a bad job. Your internal monologue is just terrible. You're just beating yourself up. It's so much more useful if you can take that number and reference it against, wait, this isn't mission critical, and I want this number to actually look like this. That's also going to give you something to hold on to as you're changing your habits, because it is about habits. It's about continuing to educate yourself. It's about continuing to work smarter in the areas where it matters most, about applying to that mission. So big picture, that's why I like these things. That's why I like bookkeeping. That's why I like budgeting, because the world is a scary place and it grounds us. It's going to give us something to build off of. If we didn't have that, if I didn't have my numbers, I would feel lost and confused because it is all overwhelming. And I know vaguely that money's bad, but my money is yet literally screaming at me, trying to tell me why it's bad. It's like, yo, just total me up. Just listen to what I'm trying to tell you. I will tell you the answer because money's your teammate. It's your resource. All it is, it's trying to help. It's supposed to help you, right? You're going to get money and appreciation for something, and money's trying to help you out. So you got to learn to listen to it. And that's why money's a language. So
wonderful. So I love that. So that acronym is LET, LET. Yeah. Language, energy, and teamwork. Yeah. Teammate.
Yeah. Teamwork works fine.
Teamwork.
I like it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh. I've learned so much. You think you know something and then you're like, oh no, I don't know anything. No. But it was wonderful. And so many good things that we've covered today. And thank you so much for going over the bookkeeping and budget. That was more for me, guys. All the things I know I should be doing, but I'm like, and I have an accountant and all that, but this is a good reminder for me. So Katherine, how can our listeners find you? So they're like, I want to work with you. Where can they find you?
Oh, yeah, you can always find me at bookkeepingartist.com. That's my website. And I'm very active on Facebook. So if you just, look up The Bookkeeping Artist, you'll see me there.
Thank you, Katherine, for joining me today. I hope to have you on again.
Thanks.
Have a great one.
Yeah. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Single Mama's Guide podcast, be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Google Play. Share your insights, takeaways, and inspiration by following the Single Mama's Guide on Instagram and Facebook.